Hmm.
What would you like to thank the younger Kinetrical for doing?
Good attempt at the name. I like that. That's bold. Ironically, that's something I would mention. Being willing to experiment, because there were definitely times I had my own insecurities, but there was always
Don't we
an
all?
element of me that was willing to experiment and try new things. That's how you learn. Like, for example, I play a lot of football now. I used to be afraid to play football until like sixth grade, and I'll shout out to my sixth grade teacher, Mr. Napadano, if somehow he ever gets a hold of this. He used to have a program for the sixth grade boys, like I think once a week, we played different sports before school. And eventually we played football. I was like, oh, this is actually pretty fun. So I tried that. I got into it. I've just been into it for in some capacity since then. I would definitely say being willing to do things that push my comfort zone. That's another thing in terms of the experimentation thing. So it's not like, well, conventional wisdom says you've got to do this and this is how you're supposed to do it. It's like, wait a minute. And why? Just because people have always done it that way doesn't mean you have to do it that way. You experiment, you try new things. I've had different issues with different companies when I like doing different work. If they don't treat you the right way, I had a story related to an eBay thing I post on my website. In essence, eBay mistreated me in a way, and rather than just take it, I reached out to the New York Times and had them write a piece about it. So that got a lot of wheels moving. Just being
Good.
willing to, be willing to experiment. Maybe I should tell that story. You have time to tell the story? I can tell the story if you
Well,
want.
tell the story. What the hell? Come on.
Okay. So I used to manufacture and import commercial kitchen equipment, gymnastics equipment, hydroponics equipment, and I regularly sell my stuff on eBay. It's better than Amazon for certain purposes, sometimes Craigslist too. And anyone who's familiar with how the eBay process works, when there's a dispute between buyers and sellers, eBay is very buyer centric. They will tend to land on their side, even when you have a mountain of evidence on the seller side saying what the seller is saying is true. There's a few reasons to do that, just because there's many more buyers than sellers. So I get that from a business perspective. Anyhow, I sold this mini donut machine, which at the time was one of my more popular items that was being sold. I sold it to this lady. She claimed that the machine didn't work. Now, I need to give you some background on this. The machine required a very specific electrical environment to work. It's not the kind of thing you can plug in at your house and it'll work. You need to have a commercial ampere outlet there with enough amps to make it work. And I would display this boldly on my links on my eBay ads. Is like, you need to have XYZ for this machine to work correctly. Because I knew there's people were going to buy it and not going to understand that. Oh, well, I plugged it in. Why doesn't it work? It was because you don't have enough electricity feeding the machine, so it's not going to work. Anyhow, lady bought the machine, said it didn't work, filed a claim. eBay sided with her, besides the fact that I actually sent the video to eBay showing the machine working before it was shipped to her. Anyhow, so they were set to give her money back, which is like around $1,500. It's an expensive machine, and it's like 80 pounds, so it costs a lot to ship too. I filed an appeal knowing it wouldn't go anywhere because eBay is going to appeal against itself. No, they're just going to side with the buyers. Like, all right, I'm not going to sit here and take this loss. So I reached out to the columnist. His name was the Haggler. I don't know if you're familiar with the New York Times. He used to run columns there. It was like a consumer affairs reporter. I think every week on the Sunday Business Times, his column will appear. It's one of my favorite columns to read because there's always fascinating stories. Anyhow, so I write this guy a pitch. It's like, hey, I got this story to tell that you haven't told in your Hagler columns before. It's like, interesting. So I give him the story. He runs it. It's months down the road. He runs the story. And then then I remember the next morning, eBay executives are calling my phone. Like, hey, we want to talk. I was like, oh, okay, you guys want to talk now that I've told the whole story. And even within that article, he did some research on me and he found my book and the title of the book. He mentioned it there. I never mentioned the book to him, which I was flattered to him. I was like, oh, wow. He mentioned the name of my book in the article. So I got my money back eventually and I got some nice press, and I have this nice pelt on my wall to show, all right, my clients, like, this is how you can attack XYZ, asymmetrical warfare without actually using guns. So it was a nice coup for me. So that's a story of where experimenting went really well. And I would to bring it back to your question, I would say that my younger self being willing to experiment and not take things as sacrosanct, I thank that younger Kenny for, yes.